we have like 5 minutes, so talk amongst yourself. I'm just warming the seat up. What, huh? Great.
Oh, I'll just go. Yes. But is it time? Yeah.
I think Mira's going to do an introduction. Yeah. And then if you want to say something, it's up to you. But Reduce Society's Child and Bang Bang Bang.
I might just welcome people.
Thank you. It's lovely.
Good morning. Oh, is it? Wait, it's good afternoon. It just turned into afternoon. Hi, my name is Meira Blaustein. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Woodstock Film Festival. For those coming in late, please take your seats. It is so nice to be here at the beautiful Klein James Art Center for a panel series. I love the panels at the festival. Just before it, we had a real powerhouse of incredible women. It was Women in Film and Media panel, and you're just about to see something really fantastic now. And right after that, our honoree Abigail Disney, who's receiving our Trailblazer Award, is going to be here for a conversation. And after that, Matt Dillon will be here for a conversation. So it's a day full of really great panels, as well as, of course, many films out there. So I hope you'll take advantage of everything. Today and tomorrow are the last 2 days of what is the 20th anniversary of the Woodstock Film Festival. I just want to take a moment and thank those who have been shepherding us financially and otherwise all these years. Without them, we couldn't possibly be here. So, because we are just a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, and we are very thankful and very much rely upon those who help us financially get here from year to year, throughout the year, and during the film festivals. So I want to thank, first of all, one of our founding sponsor and this afternoon sponsor, the Ringer Ross and BMI. Thank you so much for being with us all these years. And I want to acknowledge a few other sponsors, such as Marketech, who's been with us since the year 2000, as well as Gigantic Pictures and 120dB Films and Gray Schwartz and WGST and various individuals and foundations. Thank you all so much. Please know that without your support, an organization such as ours will not be able to exist and continue and flourish. Thank you all. And just if those of you, just put your electronic devices on silence, please. You can take photos, but don't let them ring. And you're in for a very special afternoon now with the Ringer Ross and Janis. Ian, take it away.
Thank you, Mira. Thank you, Mira. And happy 20th anniversary to you. I'm so thrilled to be here for all 20 years. It's really been an amazing thing. And today is just the cherry on top of the sundae, because we're here with Janis Ian. And I don't even think she needs me, is that me? I don't think she needs me babbling on. But I'm just so thrilled you're here. Is that me?
That's one of us. I hope it's not me.
That's on too? Oh, God. I'm double mic'd. Great. So you can hear me burp and everything. It's great. Anyway, I just wanted to welcome Janis, and I'm so thrilled that you're here. I'm going to let her start off because she's a little bit of a pro at this.
Thank you.
Then we'll talk.
I asked Doreen if I could start because, thank you. I asked Doreen if I could start because really what artists do is tell stories. And if you're not telling a story, nobody is interested. If you say, save the whales, the ecology is screwed and we're not going to have any air, nobody really cares. But if you tell a story or sing a song about two young people in love who can't kiss because there's not enough oxygen, then you have a story. So I asked if I could open with the story and then the song behind the story. I started writing songs when I was 12, and I like to say that I wrote my first song at 12. I was published at 13. I made a record at 14. I had a hit at 15, and I was a has-been at 16. And that's pretty much the arc of my career. It's been like this. The first song I wrote was, or the first song I got to record is a song about a black boy dating a white girl, and it was 1965, 66. We recorded it for Atlantic Records, who gave it back to the producer, Shadow Morton, and said they couldn't put it out because of the subject matter. He took it to 22 major labels. They all turned it down. He finally found a major label at Verve Forecast, which we later discovered had been formed by MGM Records as a tax loss. So they signed up everyone in Greenwich Village that they thought would lose money. Myself, Richie Havens, Odetta, Laura Nero, The Blues Project, Al Cooper, yes. So it didn't work out very well for them, but it worked out well for us because they released the record 3 times. And the third time, Leonard Bernstein went on television with it and gave me a pretty unprecedented 12 or 14 minutes Sunday night prime time where he castigated the radio stations for not playing it. So my record became a hit, and I was 15 and a half, 16. I didn't understand how powerful a song could be. And I started hearing things like a radio station in Atlanta was burned to the ground for playing it, or somebody at the Boston Globe was fired for quoting from it. But I did what you do when you're an adolescent faced with the ununderstandable. I ignored it. So I was playing in California at a sold-out concert, and I went into my hit song, which I insisted on doing mid-show because I didn't want to be a jerk and end with it, because I felt that I had much more to offer, as most artists do. And I heard a commotion coming from audience right. And of course, being as self-involved as any artist, I assumed they were talking about how fabulous I was. So I ignored it. And the commotion got a little louder, and a little louder, and a little louder. And finally, I stepped back from the microphone to find out what the fuss was. And just as I stepped back, a figure detached itself from the rest, and he stood up, and he cupped his hands around his mouth, and he yelled at the top of his lungs, "Nigger lover, go home!" Remember, I'm 15 and a half, 16. It's 1966, Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. I had never heard that word said out loud. I kept singing because I thought that's what a professional would do. And as I kept singing, he kept yelling. Then the people around him started yelling. And it became a really vicious chant of nigger lover, beat, beat, beat. Nigger lover, beat, beat, beat. Until I finally started to cry. I didn't want them to see me crying, so I walked off the stage with as much dignity as I could imagine. And then I ran to the ladies' room, and that's where the promoter found me crying my eyes out. Well, the promoter had been in the box office. He said, "What are you doing off stage? The show's not over. Sold out." And I said, "Well, they were calling me names." And he said, "What do you think, they were calling you names and you left the stage?" And I said, "They were calling me nigger lover." And he said, you don't leave a stage because you're being called names. Again, this was Goodman, Schwerner, Cheney era. I was really scared. And I said, I'm not going back. And he said, you have to go back. And I said, I'm not going back. We argued. And then he said the one thing that would get me to go back. He looked at me and he said, I cannot believe the girl who wrote that song is a coward. Now, I'm Jewish, and I was raised to be a Maccabee. And I was taught that if I didn't do for others, there would be no one left to do for me. And I suddenly understood that I could not face my family again if I didn't go back out. So I went back out and I started singing, and the chanting and the yelling continued, and I realized that these 20 or 30 people had spent a lot of money to come to my show to boo me off the stage. And then the most amazing thing happened. All the little 16-year-old volunteer ushers walked down the aisle and shone their flashlights in these people's faces. And suddenly they weren't quite so loud. And then the people behind them reached up and pulled them down into their seats. And they got quieter still. By the time the theater manager finally came to get them and kick them out, they were beaten. And they didn't walk out, they slunk like cowards. So in that one defining moment in my early years, I learned a great lesson, which is that a song in 3 minutes can take a bunch of 16-year-old ushers and turn them into heroes, and take a bunch of really evil-minded, petty people and show them up for the cowards that they are. You come to my door, baby. Your face is clean and shining black as night. My mama went to answer, you know, that you look so fine. Now I could understand the tears and the shame. She called you boy instead of your name, when she wouldn't let you inside. When she turned and said, but honey, he's not our kind. She said, I can't see you anymore, baby. I can't see you anymore. You walked me down to school, baby. Everybody's acting deaf and blind, until they turn and say, why don't you just stick to your own kind? My teachers all laugh, their smirking stares are cutting deep down in our affairs. Preachers of equality think they believe it, then why won't they just let us be? They say I can't see you anymore, baby. I can't see you anymore. One of these days I'm gonna stop my listening. I'm gonna raise my head up high. One of these days I'm gonna raise up my glistening wings and fly. But that day will have to wait for a while. Baby, I'm only society's child. When we're older, things may change, but for now, this is the way they must remain. I say I can't see you anymore, baby.
song over here. That song. Thank you. Isn't that amazing? That song has just torn me apart all my life. Every time I hear it, I cry. I
I'm
can't
sorry.
help it. No, it's good. You know, it's one of those like, how did you even write that song at 15? And all I'm sitting here thinking is, when you did that, you ended up on a TV show with Leonard Bernstein talking about this song, and you performed it, and there he is on camera. I don't know if you saw, it was like a CBS TV special.
Yeah.
And he's going, oh my God, you know, how did you get that cadence? How did you do that? How did you feel when you had that moment
I was
with
glad
him?
my grandparents were going to stop asking what college I was going to go to, really.
That's it?
You know, I just, I didn't understand the power of television because our television viewing was very limited. And my parents were very concerned that I grow up broadly based. So like there was a Chaplin festival and they were worried that Chaplin would be banned. So I was 10 years old and they schlepped into New York every day for a week so I could go to the festival. I knew who Leonard Bernstein was, of course, but it didn't occur to me that there was anything unusual in this. He was always promoting new artists. So I didn't understand that he had the power to make a country full of radio stations change.
It was also him and the magnitude of his opinion
That
and
is
how
amazing.
taken he was by what you created. And it made me, when I watched that video the other day, think, how did she do that at 15? How did you learn to write so exquisitely?
I think it's a combination. I think that on the one hand, we underestimate people when they're young. We really do. We get older and we forget that kids who are 10, 11, 12, 13, they're writing. They're expressing themselves in ways that they keep hidden from us because we don't get it. And so I think there's that. And I think there's also the talent which you are born with, and I'm very fortunate. I've never met a really great artist who doesn't stand humbled by their talent because we know we didn't do anything to get it. I don't know how I knew to lift the chorus. I don't know how I knew that using the word baby would make the song more accessible. I can dissect it now.
Right. So you
All
didn't
I was-
study to learn this?
No, I'm a 10th grade dropout.
I'm proud of it.
And proud of it. Schools are not for people like me.
Right. That's true. They're
Yeah.
a business sometimes, you know? So this song went on to win I know it's in the Grammy Hall of Fame. So
It's
it
in the
must have,
Grammy Hall of
it won
Fame
the
along
Grammy,
with that
right?
17. It did not win the Grammy. It
Oh, it
was
should have.
no. I can't remember what won the Grammy. My first album was nominated for my first Grammy. And the coolest part of that was that I got to present with Arlo Guthrie, who I thought was just the cutest thing on two legs. And I told him the other week, I said, you don't remember the purple crushed velour suit that you wore, but I remember.
That's funny. God. So the controversy, how did you live that down? That was not just that night at that concert. This was a
No,
public
it went on for a
outcry.
long time. It was hard. It was hard. One of the reasons that I started staying after shows to sign and meet people was because I thought I need to stop being afraid of my audience because I was so terrified. People would do things like I got a vinyl record in the mail, and I was really paranoid by then about mail. I insisted on opening my own mail, and I opened it from the center, and they had put razor blades all around the sides.
Oh my God.
People would spit at my food and then serve it to me. It was a really harsh beginning, and I was under contract to MGM with Shadow Morton, a great producer who for some unfathomable reason put me in the studio with the musicians and said, hey, go for it, and literally let me do what I wanted with Society's Child. He asked me if I needed anything, and I said, I need a harpsichord and a 12-string. And he said, why? And I said, because of the intro, which I then had to go home and write because I was absolutely sure I would never get a chance to play a harpsichord or a 12-string again. But I walked off stage at Philharmonic Hall when I was, I think, 17 and a half, and I told my manager then that I was stopping because I didn't know. I cut 4 albums in 3 years and went to school, and my parents were getting divorced, and the FBI were watching us, and all this other stuff was happening. I didn't know if I could be a great songwriter, and what I realized when I was 16 was that people were listening. I was at the Berkeley Folk Festival. I met Joplin, and she said something about, but people are listening to your lyrics. And I'd never thought about it. And it suddenly occurred to me that people were listening. I had the power to change somebody's life. And so I went away to find out whether I could be a good writer. And I stayed away until I was, I think, 21 or 22 when I wrote a song called Jessie and then a song called Stars. And I thought, now I'm a writer.
I just want to go back to something you slipped in there about the FBI watching you.
Yeah, well, those guys.
You want to explain that?
My father was a chicken farmer when I was growing up. My mother was a waitress. My father went back to school on the GI Bill and became a teacher. My mother became assistant to the dean at Rutgers and then a fundraiser for Bank Street. Wow. But when I was young, I lived on a chicken farm, and my father made the mistake of going to a meeting of farmers about the price of eggs. And this was before I was born. The FBI picked him up. And then after I was born, he tried to come into the house, and my father shut the door and said without a warrant they couldn't come in. My mother, meanwhile, had attended the Civil Rights Congress, and from that point on, we were under watch. So I grew up with these FBI guys. I mean, I was in love with Joan Baez, and I thought, how am I ever going to get Joan Baez to run away with me if these people are watching?
That kind of intrigued her, actually.
It did, actually. She's been good to me since I was 16. But that's why. It was the absurdity of those years. When I look around now, I keep reminding myself that we lived through HUAC. We can live through this.
Yeah.
I don't mean to get political here. Well, yeah, I do.
You're amongst friends.
And if not, I really am at the age where I don't care. Sorry.
I think there's a few of us in the room that can relate. Okay, so 1975, you come out of your incubation period, and you have this other song
I do.
called At 17.
I do, and it was an overnight success that only took 4 years.
But it went '1.
It did go #1, and I was very lucky. But listening to the panel before ours with 5 women filmmakers, it was interesting because the disgusting thing that promoters used to say in those days was, pardon me, there was not a dry seat in the house.
They peed?
No, worse. And the assumption was only men could sell millions of records. Women's records were not that interesting. So At 17 from the first had an uphill battle, and the executive producer did a really smart thing. Radio wouldn't play it because it was too long and it was too depressing. So he sent a copy to the wife of every radio programmer in the country.
How smart is that?
And they said, why aren't you playing this? And then he did what would not be allowed today, which is he took out 60-second spots, and the first 50 seconds were the song. And then it was just Janisian At 17 from between the lines. And I went on the road for 2 years. And it was that kind of on the road we were talking about the other day. Wake you up at 5, you start press at 6, you have lunch with some radio people at 11 or 12, then at 1 o'clock you're on television for the afternoon shows, at 4 o'clock you go to your sound check, you do press in between, at 6 o'clock you get a half-hour break for dinner, then you're doing press and meeting the mayor until 8 o'clock for the show. After the show there's a meet and greet, you fall into bed at midnight, if you're lucky. I got to the point where somebody had to literally come in and put a washcloth on my face to wake me up because I was so tired. But it was also, I got to go to Japan. I got to go to Australia. I got to go to Europe. I got to go all over the world with various hit records because I had hits in other places after that, and get entree to places that Caucasians in particular, Western Caucasians, were not normally allowed access to. places in Japan that no Caucasian had ever been in, places in Holland where only the Dutch people went. So that was amazing because I'm a second generation American, and that was the American dream. I was living it. So it was worth all that time.
There was also, speaking of television again, that song, actually you were the first musical artist ever on this new show called Saturday Night Live.
Me and Billy Preston, yes. Yeah.
So it was at 17 that you sang on that show.
It was at 17, and a song called In the Winter. You know, I am not in any way saying I'm not grateful for having hit records, because I still get to make a living, and it's fantastic. I'm 68. I mean, I'm really lucky. But on the other hand, how do you follow at 17? What do you put out next? You can't.
At 18?
Yeah. Yeah. So nothing I did could live up to that song until I was in my 30s and 40s. And by then it was too late to follow it up. So it was great, and yet it was not so great. But Saturday Night Live was great, because who would have thought that it would become that cool? I mean,
Did
now
you have
my
any
nephews,
idea when you did it
None
that it
of
was
them
the beginning
did.
of this thing?
No, Lauren was running around going, oh my God, I hope we can get some sponsors eventually. You know, all those first commercials where they made up the commercials were because they couldn't get sponsors.
Really?
Nobody,
I never knew that.
it was the first live entertainment show since the Sullivan Show. And they had a lot of the Sullivan camera people there,
Wow.
sound people, but nobody had any idea whether it would work. You know, live television. I had grown up with live television. It had Billy, as had George Carlin, who was the host, as had Jim Henson. I remember walking and seeing this, I think it was a frog talking to a pig, and thinking, oh my, you know, what have I gotten myself into now? But the performers had grown up in live TV, but none of the cast had, and none of the executives had. So the performers weren't that worried. Everybody else was freaking out.
Well, what an epic thing to do. And that song went on to, it did win the Grammy, right?
It did. It got 5 Grammy nominations, which joined Aretha Franklin and I think 2 other women. Yeah, it set records. But then, you know, years later, you discover that your record company skewed everything so that I got Best Female Performer because none of the other boys could get that. Best Female Vocalist. And Brooks got Best Engineered Album, which he totally deserved.
Brooks Arthur?
Yes, Brooks Arthur, wonderful producer, still a good friend, who coincidentally had engineered Society's Child, so the Grand Falloon keeps going around. But yeah, that gave me 5 Grammy nominations, and a couple of years ago, I was saying last night, when my audiobook won my 3rd Grammy, and then the audiobook after it with Gene Smart got me my 10th nomination. And at that point, that was the beginning of, thank you very much, that was great, I wanted 10, I've got 10, now I'm not coming again.
Only
I
you
know,
could
that
write the
sounds
story of
horribly
your
arrogant.
life and end up winning a Grammy for recording it.
I know, isn't that cool? I think they were just so tired of politicians. There was a good story about that because I didn't think I had a chance. And my competition, when they announced it, you know, we find out when everybody else does. So my wife was sitting there with an iPad looking, and I was sitting there like this going, okay, what, did I get a nomination? Because the chances were so minuscule. And Pat, my wife, goes, oh my God! And then there's silence. And I said, what? And she said, ah. And I said, am I nominated? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, that's great. Who's my competition?
Uh-oh.
And she said, ah. And I said, just read the names, okay? And she said, okay, Rachel Maddow, Ellen DeGeneres, former President Clinton, and First Lady Michelle Obama. So the only thing that popped into my head was that there's got to be a joke in here. A former president and a first lady and 3 lesbians walk into a bar. So it was when I won a stunning upset, and I totally forgot everything that I had planned to say in graceful defeat. And I told this joke. And it's like,
no.
oh, I can't believe that's what I did.
But no punchline, or the punchline is you won the Grammy.
I keep saying to people I need a punchline, but nobody's ever been able to come up with one.
We'll work on it, right?
Room full of artists here. I am the punchline normally, so.
So what is it like being an artist and living up to your own talent? What does that feel like?
You know, I really believe, and one of the reasons that I don't want to go on and on.
Oh, go ahead.
No, my goal in this last part of my life is to learn to be brief, because it's so much harder to be brief and simple than it is to be long and complex. Then again, I'm from Jersey, so I really believe, oh God, I believe in art. I think that art saves lives. I think that art is what stands between us and chaos. I think that artists are the last refuge. Very often when times get hard, we are the keepers of dreams. When people forget they have dreams, we are the keepers of honesty, because at a certain point in our lives we realize that we need to take the long view, not the short, and that means you are not of a nation, of a religion, you are of art. I believe that to the point where it sounds pretentious to me when I say it. But I think it's so vital. And to that end, I think it's really vital that artists try to live up to their talent. And I have very niche talents. I am comfortable on stage. I'll never be the performer Nina Simone was. I just won't. That's fine. But I'm comfortable. I write songs that make people feel safe about things they normally are scared of. I don't know anyone else who does that as well as I do. That's a gift. I have a small voice. I'm a short person. I have a couple of talents.
You have tiny hands.
I have tiny hands. I'm not even going to go there. But I think that it's really important when I meet people that I live up to what at 17 brought to them, for instance, because the wrong words for me are carried forever. My wife said it to me once. She said, you know lots of famous people. You meet famous people all the time. Maybe that person never met anybody famous. You're the only one. Do you want them to go down for the rest of their lives thinking that's what all of you are like? And I thought, no. So in hour 14 of a day, when I'm signing things and telling people, how would you like this signed? And they say, to me. And I say, what's your name? And they go, it's me. I remind myself that this is a big moment for them. And I met Smokey Robinson, and a hero to me. And I know how that feels, because all I could find to say was, no shit, Smokey Robinson. And now I think Smokey Robinson, if he ever meets me again, will think that's that girl who said, no shit, Smokey Robinson. You try to be congruent with your talent and to grow into it. Because when you started as young as I did, it's hard to grow into it. But I try to be congruent with it. So when several people came up to me while I was trying to get organized here, I tried to be polite, even though what I really want to do is go, I'm working. Do I come where you work and stand there and talk to you? But I also understand that they don't think that they'll get a chance otherwise. So it's a really big deal, and I try to be polite. Yeah. I try.
What's your definition of success? And do you think that that changes over time?
It morphs. Yeah, it changes. I was 14, I wanted to be a Beatle. I wanted to not be able to walk down the street. I had that. I've had it 3 times in my life. I didn't like it.
Why?
Because you have no life. Right now, we just moved, and for the first time since I was 16, I live without an alarm system. I don't have to...
Don't say where you're living.
No. But I'm under the radar enough that people know my work rather than my face. And that, to me, has a lot of safety to it. I'm a writer. What I want to do is write. I don't want to be pardon this term, and I don't mean to sound ungrateful, I don't want to spend my life as a performing monkey. There are people like Billy Joel, who I think is brilliant, or Elton.
Speaking of performing monkey. No.
But he's brilliant. He's a great performer. Elton's a great performer. Bet is a great performer. These are people that I've worked with or I know, and they're amazing. For them, a song is a means to an end. For me, the song is the end. When I'm done with the song, I'm done. I love performing. I love being in front of an audience. I love my audiences, but I'm really happy staying home and writing. So my definition of success now is, can I have hot water? Can I have a roof? Can I have a certain amount of air conditioning? Can I go out to eat once in a while? I think I'm really successful because I can do all of those things without spending every day of my life on the road.
Right.
But when I was 12 or 14, I would have thought I was used up. You know, how sad that I'm at the point where I don't care about those other things. It's a degree. It's not a competition. We've created a world where everything is competition. It's not a competition. You're either living up to your talent or you're not. If you're constantly comparing yourself to someone else's talent, you're going to be a failure. There's no way around that. But if you can compare yourself to your own self and do better than you did the last time, you're winning already.
I noticed that sometimes you'll refer to, should I show up as Janisian?
The
Or
Janisian
this
thing.
other person? How do you distinguish those two?
A lot of therapy. Because it's difficult to separate. You can't separate yourself from your talent. I think that's really dangerous. But you can separate yourself from the performer in you. The performer in me loves being center stage. The performer in me loves performing. The performer in me wants everything to be about me. I mean, I don't understand why this whole festival isn't about me. You know, and I'm not even in films, right? But you reach an age where what I say when I teach is you can't bring your songwriter to the bedroom. You can't bring the bedroom to your performance, and you can't bring your performer to the songwriter. Because if you don't have clear lines as a human being, which as a writer, that's what's important to me. Other human beings, that's what I write about, human life. If you can't separate the performer and say, right now I'm being Janis, and that means that I'm sitting up straight, I'm in a mid-Atlantic accent, I stand a certain way, I behave a certain way, I use certain hand gestures. I don't do that at dinner with my wife. She'd be going, why are you being Janis? There's no audience. You have to.
What would you be doing if you weren't Janisian? What's that like?
I'd be playing with my dog, or reading, or watching a movie, or walking, or ranting about something that makes absolutely no sense to anyone but me, or talking to myself, because writers do that all the time, and people look at us funny. Although now with phones, you know, everybody talks to themselves.
It's true. It's true.
But I think also a song like, I've been really lucky that my hits have been things like At 17, because they're songs that 30, 40 years later I can still feel good about and proud of. You know? That's a piece of luck.
You gonna play it?
Nah. I played part of it, yeah. Can you hear that? So I wrote this song sitting at my mom's kitchen table. I'd had to move back in with her when I was 22 because I couldn't earn a living. And I was reading the New York Times magazine section because I couldn't do the crossword. And there was a line that opened a story about a debutante where she said, I learned the truth at 18. And I had a guitar in my hand and I was playing this little samba figure. And I thought, I learned the truth at 18. And it didn't scan. So I made it 17, and it took 3 months to write because it was so scary. Because it was so... I reached a point in the song where I thought I can either be true or I can be not true. And I picked true, and I was never going to sing it. I sang it for my mom. I was never going to sing it for anybody else. And my mom talked me out of it. I learned the truth at 17. that love was meant for beauty queens and high school girls with clear-skinned smiles who married young and then retired. The Valentines I never knew, the Friday night charades of youth were spent on one more beautiful. At 17 I learned the truth. And those of us with ravaged faces, lacking in the social graces, desperately remained at home, inventing lovers on the phone who called to say, come dance with me, and murmured vague obscenities. It isn't all it seems. At 17, brown-eyed girl in hand-me-downs, whose name I never could pronounce, said, pity please the ones who serve, 'cause they only get what they deserve. And the rich relationed hometown queen marries into what she needs with a guarantee of company and haven for the ugly. So remember those who win the game lose the love they sought to gain in debentures of quality and dubious integrity. The small town eyes will gape at you in dull surprise when payment due exceeds accounts received at 17. To those of us who knew the pain of Valentines that never came, and those whose names were never called when choosing sides for basketball. It was long ago and far away. The world was younger than today, when dreams were all they gave for free to ugly duckling girls like me. We all play the game, and when we dare, we cheat ourselves at solitaire, inventing lovers on the phone, repenting other lives unknown. They call and say, come on, dance with me, and murmur vague obscenities at ugly girls like me at 17.
I think it's the first time I've cried during one of these. God. I think you should keep writing, Janis.
Well,
I think you got something.
I think that's the other thing that changes with your definition of success. I mean, at this point, I'm very aware that I'm in a service industry. And I have
Why do you
chosen
put
to
it that
serve the
way?
songs. Because I think that someone like a hairdresser or a waitress, my mom was, or an attorney like my wife became in her 40s, or myself, we perform a service. And I go back to the troubadours, or I go back to the cave people, to the first person who came back from a hunt with a story instead of just going, yo, meat. You know? My legacy goes back to that first person. And so we serve the community. That doesn't mean that we have to serve it when we're writing, because when we're writing, I think we have to serve what we believe. But it does mean that if I have a writing assignment, for instance, I mean, if you call me and you're a young filmmaker and you don't have any money and you say, and I really need a song about blah, I'm a journeyman songwriter. That's what I do. You want a song about a three-legged dog with a boy on Mars? I'm your girl. So there's a balance there that you have to serve. And I prefer to think of myself when I'm being public self as in service, because otherwise I'm only serving myself. And myself, as my teacher Stella Adler used to say, is pretty boring when you come down to it. My life is pretty uninteresting. It's the same as everybody else's. It's just it's lived on a bigger scale because it's public. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Do you think failure is important?
Yes.
Why?
Because you learn from failure. If you look at the people who have been successful from the start, most of it is pretty sad stories. Livingston Taylor does a great thing in his classes. He asks the question I've always asked, which is, how many of you want to be famous? And everybody goes. And then he says, how many of you would trade places with Michael Jackson? And there's not a hand raised. So you have to decide what you want to be, and life is a series of those decisions. Right now, I came to this festival. I'm having a ball because for the first time I've gone to a festival and I got no dog in the race. I'm not selling anything. I don't have a record contract. I don't have a publishing contract. I don't care because I'm 68. I can earn a living. And I have a pretty happy life. And that attitude allows me to enjoy myself in a way that I couldn't enjoy myself when I was constantly reaching for the brass ring. And I learned from reaching for it and failing that most of my life would be considered a failure. And that I had to stop considering it that way or I was going to turn bitter, and bitterness would kill my art and it would kill me.
Was it weird to walk away from fame, which I know you've
Every
done
time.
a number of times?
It's going to be weird when I walk away again.
So what was that like? What was the hard part? What was the easy part?
That's a good question. Wow. The hard part is access. You lose access. Because the one thing fame gives you, and my friend Walter is a multi-millionaire. And he's a big Pete Seeger fan, and when there was Pete's celebration at Madison Square Garden, we were talking, and is that me? Anyway, we were talking, and I said, here's the difference between money and fame. No matter how much money you have, you can't go backstage. I just have to knock on the door and say, tell Pete Janis is here. So when you're being famous, it buys you a level of access that you can't get otherwise. And you can use that access in really wonderful ways. And there are also things like the perks. I mean, you get bumped up on the plane. You get to go into the clubs for free. You get free meals, although usually you end up paying for them one way or another. There's a lot of perks to being famous, but nowadays being famous also means you're living in a TMZ world. You can't go out of your house. You can't not look good if you care about looking good. You can't do so many different things. When I was busy being famous, whether it was, I think about Japan, which was probably the most famous I've ever been, where they actually closed schools so the kids could come greet my trains. This was a huge deal. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go out of the hotel. I couldn't make any friends. I couldn't meet anybody. So I got all these wonderful experiences, but it was in a very narrow band. Now I go to Japan, I can walk down the street. It was weird to get used to because I was so used to being center all the time, but in a lot of ways it was extremely pleasant. And still is. I mean, like I said, I like being under the radar. I like that the songs are recognized and I'm not. I really like that.
Do you ever not like it?
When I have a song that I wish everybody heard, yeah. No, I'm serious. I mean, there have been maybe 5 times in my life that that's happened. At 17, Jessie, I wanted people to hear. I started recording again because I wrote a song called Tattoo that I really wanted people to hear. And I was telling you about this new song, Resist, that I really want people to hear, and yet I don't have a vehicle for it. But the thought of turning around and spending...
You can play it today.
I will. Let me tune, because an untuned guitar is just a thing of embarrassment. But the thought of going through what you have to go through to get a major label, which the chances of me at 68 as anything other than a novelty act are nil. What I would have to go through to get the record out in social media, to create a viral sensation, to do all of those things. I'm 68, my wife is 71. There go the next 5 years of my life. I'm not willing to give that up. So my hope now is with a song like this that somebody else records it. And I get to enjoy that, and I don't have to be front and center all the time. That being said, I'm tuning, so talk amongst yourselves.
Did you tell me something about a PBS special that's happening?
Yeah, I just signed with that. This
Miss
guy,
Anonymity?
I
is
sound,
that?
I sound terribly ungrateful. I'm sorry. A guy named Jeff Bieber from Wheaton, Washington, which is the big PBS station there, started pursuing me, and for 6 months I kept saying, I don't have time to talk to you. I didn't realize that that sounded like playing hard to get. I genuinely didn't have time. And then he flew down to where I was, and he made a really good case for making a 2-hour documentary of my life. And I signed off on it a month, 2 months ago, with great reservations, because there is a point where I genuinely, I'm not being like coy. I genuinely do not think it's that interesting. Plus, I wrote an autobiography. It's already done. I mean, I don't want to be
But that was a few years ago. Your story's still going.
And it's still going, but you know, who cares? I mean, really.
I think people care.
No. I'm not trying. I'm putting this really badly, and I apologize. There is a point at which I have to decide, am I going to go be an artist and a writer and spend the rest of my life doing that, or am I going to go chasing being known? And it's a really clear choice that I have to make. Am I going to hang on to my music forever? Or should Society's Child go to the Library of Congress and go into the public domain? Those are very clear choices that I now have to make. And agreeing to what will eventually be, I guess, a TV special or a movie or whatever, was a big choice for me, because when I was 40, where was he? You know, where were these people when I really desperately needed this? When I couldn't get arrested? And now that I don't care, there they are. It's the Zen thing. You give it up and it comes to you. But sometimes you have to say, okay, it's great that you're here. Have some pasta, go away. And you're done. Anyway.
Don't you think the context has changed, though, recently,
Yes.
in the last few years especially, about women and a kind of focus on that expansion, and you realizing that you've always been a pioneer in that community? That's what I see.
I think I've been really lucky. And it's like being Zelig. I was in the right place at the right time a lot, a surprising amount. And I think it has changed. I see a change when I perform. There are women production managers. There are women lighting people. Have I met a woman sound person in the last 5 years? I've met 2. If I were, and I don't say this to be nasty, but if I were a boy and I played guitar the way I play guitar on stage, I would have made the cover of Acoustic Guitar magazine by now. But they were very clear that women on magazine covers don't sell. And if they do sell, they have to be rock and roll women. So yes, it's changed. It's fantastic that it's changed. But this song that I'm about to sing grew out of my unfortunate experience with Bill Cosby, where it wasn't the sexual experience, it was more being banned from TV experience. My experiences as a woman through the years, what I saw my mother go through, what I see my friends who are artists go through, what I see everybody go through. One day I started thinking about it and I got really angry. And the song took a year to write because it's a complicated song. And I kept trying to simplify it, and then I thought, it's a complicated issue. I can't really simplify it. So I haven't done it that much. It's going to be weird. She is, she is, she is. She is, she is, she is. She is, she is, she is. Too short, too fat, too skinny. Too tall, too plain, too pretty. Too hot, too wet, too sticky. Too picky. Oh, what an ugly girl. Oh, what an ugly girl. Put her in high heels so she can't run. Carve up between her legs so she can't come. Get her a dress for easy access. Tell everybody that she's just like all the rest. How long, how long, how long, how long? How long, how long, how long, how long? Tell me I'm ugly so I'll buy your crap. Tell me you want me so I don't talk back. Tell me I carry the invisible sin. Tell me I'm holy if I cover up my skin. Tell me that my body bears a permanent stain. Tell me we can marry if I give up my name. Call me a baby so I never grow up. Tell me you love me when you only wanna funny how I whisper. You think it's a roar. You ask me to the table, then you seat me on the floor. You want me to be sexy. You want me to be pure. I cannot be a virgin and I will not be a whore. Resist. Resist, resist, resist. Resist, 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 resist. It's a funny kind of thing when you sing a little song and you get a couple people to sing along. It's the power of community. Authenticity changes your reality. I know it's hard to believe when they're yelling in your ear and it's the only thing you're able to hear. But you raise up your fist and you learn to resist and you say, I will not disappear. I will not disappear. I will not disappear. So resist, 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 resist. Resist, 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 resist.
That's fantastic.
So you write something like that, and you think, I premiered it at Cambridge Folk Festival for 15,000 of my best friends, and you think, you know, that's really a song that I would love to see an animated feature of that song. I would love to see a film use that song. I would love to see other artists sing that song, because I think that it says things that I was scared to say, which is part of why it took so long. I mean, you started talking about men thinking a woman is too sticky. Well, I've heard men say that. She's too sticky, man. Don't fuck her. She's too sticky. You know, you hear those things and you go, somebody needs to say that. Somebody needs to say that out loud. Don't disappear. But it's hard because the generation that I come from, you don't talk like that. And the generation that is here now doesn't talk like that. It's hard to find a focal point nowadays. It's what we were saying the other day. You know, people say content is king, content is king, content is king, blah, blah, blah. No, attention is king. If you can keep people's attention on something, then you own them. And that's where I like performing. That's where the fun is.
Yeah. Well, you're great at it.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Do you guys have any questions? Because if you do, we have a mic right over here, and you need to ask into it. So
Yeah,
raise your
please
hand.
use the microphone because they're
There's
taping.
one back there.
If I'd known you were taping, I would have been taller.
Well, what a treat. Thank you so much, Janis.
You're welcome.
I actually wanted to ask, I was in the audience the day you won the Grammy. That was us from Woodstock screaming. Anyway, the highwaymen better scoop you up at some point and take you with them because you're exactly what they're talking about. So, but has anybody ever sung your songs that did it right?
Most people who do them right.
Tell us. I can't think of it.
I think it's the biggest compliment in the world when somebody records somebody else's song. I know how many songs Bette Midler goes through before she picks one. So when Bette did Some People's Lives and named an album after it, it was like, I know that I beat out 500-600 songs, and she fell in love with that song. I think Celine Dion does an amazing job on At 17, and I think it was incredibly brave of her to do that. Maura O'Connell, who is not famous on that scale, but to me is one of the great singers out there, does Some People's Lives and an unknown song called Unwinding better than I could ever do it. You know, again, it's not a competition. So to me, if someone, some kid on YouTube who's 15 years old and just learning the guitar, sits down and learns at 17, which is a very difficult song to play, and then puts it on YouTube, and they're a little out of key, and they're a little out of tune, but that song mattered enough to them to step out. That's huge to me. And so I don't have a favorite. John Mellencamp does a wonderful job on one of my songs. Mel Torme cut stars. So did Cher, so did Glenn Campbell, so did Nina Simone. Each one of those is totally different, and each one of those is totally wonderful to me. Okay. Guy in the cap, you.
Wow, I have goosebumps. That was.
Okay, don't have goosebumps, just ask questions.
No, just because of your performance. Thank you. That song, "Resist," it shows that you're obviously listening to music a lot, or you're tuned in or plugged in.
Yeah, I don't actually listen to that much music.
Well,
I listen to old music. But yeah, I have two granddaughters. I mean, they're dealing with this.
there you go, right. So the question, I guess, would be is if you could imagine someone performing that song other than yourself, like you said, somebody to cover it. Do you have like somebody who would be your?
Oh, I think Pink would do it great. I think Pink
Good
would
answer.
be amazing. Yeah, because she has the voice for it, and she has the attitude for it.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
a great call.
But you know, to me, you always write songs and you think, God, I have a song called My Tennessee Hills that I thought I'm writing a George Jones song, but George didn't want to cut it. You know, what are you going to do? Dolly Parton cut it with me. So there was somebody in the back. You have to shout because of the
I have the mic.
you have an idea. Oh, there's a lady. Hey, ho, when you're done, there's a lady all the way in the back.
Is that Barbara?
Thank you
I think
so
it-
much,
I'm
Janis.
not sure, but if it is, I think you're really cool. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much
You're so
for
welcome.
being such a badass.
Thank Doreen.
But I do want to say that this whole issue that comes up around a documentary, I could just see an attitude adjustment around that, because there's something about the visual of your life that we need to capture and keep for the history of what you are a part of and a leader of. And
So-
we need to have that. And please, I can't wait. It's gonna
Well,
be
yeah, I
great.
can, but okay. Thank you. So the reason that I agreed to this documentary after speaking with this producer for so long is the same reason I wrote my autobiography, which, God, sounds pretentious, which is, if I wrote an autobiography, I wanted it not to just be me, 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 me. I wanted it to be about the times I came up in and what was going on in those times. And I think that's a large part of why it won the Grammy, because it wasn't only about my life, it was about how all those other lives impinged on the times and they impinged on me. And one of the big discussions I had a lot with this producer, because this is not a familiar world to me, this is very alien to me. It's a different language, films from music. I have to call friends in film to say, what did they mean when they said this? Because to me as a musician, maybe it was insulting. But for a film person, it's not. And one of my criteria with him was, I don't want this to just be about me. I want it to be society's child, the times. Why that song? Not, aren't I fabulous? It's not that I don't think I'm fabulous, because I am enough of a performer that I do truly think I am absolutely wonderful. And the world should revolve around me as it normally does. But I think that I try to take the long view, as I said earlier. As an artist, I try to take the long view, and the long view is that 100 years from now, I would hope that at 17 is still providing solace to young people who feel like there's no one in the world who understands. Whereas my name is not going to provide that solace. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was...
Barbara?
Okay, tell me that's
Hi.
Barbara Koppel, okay?
That's Barbara Koppel.
No shit, really?
Well, this other woman sort of asked you what I wanted to. And I guess for me, whoever this person is, he's so lucky to be able to do a documentary about you. And what this is all about in making documentaries is that it's passed on to generation. And if you've said yes, open up. Just go for it and make it beautiful, because we make our films with love, and that's what you deserve.
Well said.
You two need to spend
Thank you. That
a
was good.
moment today, if you can, by the way.
That was good to hear. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. And then this lady...
I just first have to say you're an amazing inspiration. I'm a musician, but nowhere near anywhere you are. I just wanted to ask, is there ever a moment when it's too late? Is it ever too late to start? Because, I mean, a
To
lot of
start
people
what?
didn't start at 15 like you did, writing
but
songs.
To start what?
To start telling your stories.
No, why would there be?
You know, because at 15 and you're now at 68, you've got a wealth of experience, but, you know.
But one of the important things you have to remember if you're an artist is that nobody can do what you do. Period. Nobody in the world can write the same song you can write. Nobody in the world can tell the same story you can tell. And no one has the right to take that from you. It doesn't matter how old or young you are. It doesn't matter whether you're going to be famous or not famous, successful in the eyes of the world or not. What matters is the story that you hold inside you. If you have the desire for that story to come out, if you're 95 years old, it doesn't matter. What matters is the story. Don't let anyone take that from you. You know, I spent too many years with the music industry telling me I was too old for this, that, and the other. Doesn't matter. It's still the story. This lady had a... Hello, sorry. Hi.
It's more, I would like to tell you more something than ask you a question, if that's okay?
I don't know. I don't know what time
Real
it is.
quick.
We have 20 minutes.
This
Talk
is
about
my
me for 20
partner,
minutes.
25 years,
Hi.
Maureen.
Hi, Mazel
Um,
Tov, 25 years.
25 years, first time I ever heard her sing was one of your songs.
Thank you.
Made me absolutely, blew me away, blew everybody away. Fast forward like maybe 12 years, I got very sick. I was in the hospital, and I don't even remember this, but the nurse called her And apparently I said to her, can you please sing to me? And she said, what do you want me to sing? And I said, my favorite song. And she sang me Lover's Lullaby. And the whole hospital, like everybody was in my room listening, and they just like were burst out in applause and stuff for her. We saw you.
So that's what I mean when I say I'm in service. I'm in a service.
Absolutely.
I serve the songs.
And
That's great. Thank you.
and it was just amazing. I mean, it's just your songs have helped me heal, helped her heal, and by her doing that, actually it turned it around, and I made a recovery.
Thank you. Thanks for telling me that.
Question about that?
You know, that's the other thing, and I think it, in a way, is tandem with what Barbara was saying. You don't know where your work is going to go. I would never have thought that a woman who was taken prisoner during, I think, the Gulf War and was held in solitary emailed me and said, I sang every Janisian song I knew to keep going. How do you, I can't even take that in. I know that when Society's Child wasn't played in America, they played it all over Armed Forces Radio. And I know that because I get a lot of Vietnam vets at my shows.
Right.
I would never have dreamed that. You don't know where your work is going to go, and that's one of the reasons that you have to trust that there's never a right time and there's never a wrong time. There's just time. Wow, that's profound.
It is. Put it out there. Yes.
I loved watching you smile. Thank you.
Thank you for making me. If you had any bit of advice you could give to a hypothetical person who totally doesn't exist and isn't asking this question,
I know her well.
Who is a young performer, 17 years old, what would you say to her? Any advice that you wish you had at that age?
I would say two things which I wouldn't have listened to at 17. I would say, number one, something Stella Adler, my acting teacher, taught me, which is trust your talent, because your talent will always know better than you know. If you can listen to that small voice, like I know that I'm on the right track in a song like Resist when it makes me a little uncomfortable. If I'm uncomfortable, I know that's what I'm supposed to be saying. I had a business manager who represented himself as a CPA and worked for me from the time I was 14 till I was 33. And I had really bad feelings about him for about 7 years. But I was talked out of it, and as a result wound up $1.3 million in debt to the IRS and lost everything. If I had been listening and had been proactive about it, that might not have happened. It was good that it happened in the end. So I would say trust your talent first, because your talent will lead you in places that your brain won't.
Why was it good that it happened?
It was good that it happened because otherwise I might have stayed in LA for another 10 years chasing the brass ring. And as it was, I moved to Nashville in part because it was cheaper, and I learned what it was like to be a criminal and
Excuse me?
to work for cash and work under the table and
Doing what?
hide. Because
Criminal?
every time I earned any money, the IRS would take it out of the bank. So, and it forced me to become a better solo performer because I couldn't bring a band. And if I hadn't gone to Nashville, I wouldn't have met Pat, who I've lived with for the last 30 years. So it all worked out. That's how I choose to look at it.
Good.
But the other thing that I would say is listen to everyone because you don't know. There are a lot of people who know a lot more about songwriting and playing than I do, and I listen to them. But don't trust anyone. And I say that in all seriousness. I trust my wife, I adore her, but I also know that she could die and I would still be left with the music. So when it comes to my work, at the end of the day, I have to trust my vision and my eye and my heart. When we recorded at 17, I threw my manager at the time out of the studio because she kept telling me I was ruining a hit. And I finally said, I don't care, because that's not why I wrote it. But you need to leave because you're really disrupting my session. that was trusting my talent. I've always, and I think this is true of most artists, I can defend my work in a way that I cannot defend myself. It's really hard for me to defend myself when somebody does something wrong. But if you muck with my work, I will kill you. Yes.
Thank you so much for this opportunity
You're so
to
welcome.
see you live. I listened to you as a young teenager, that first album, Upstairs in My Den, over and over and over again. And it was so prevalent then, and it's just as prevalent now. I have a 15-year-old granddaughter who will be 16 at the end of the month, and she has my vinyl of your album.
Good.
So keep it going, and you should record that song.
We'll see. Thank you, though. Thank you. Does anyone have a question, like where I think the stock market is going? Or? Yeah, tell us. Yes.
I have a question back here.
Hi.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
I'm getting to meet all these documentary makers that I've only watched their films, and this is so cool for me.
This is such an honor. I can't tell you. I think I had the vinyl, the cassette, the 8-track. I think I can sing the song at 17 backwards, so this is I'm having a fangirl moment.
Thank you.
My question for you, Janis, is can you share with us a little bit about process? Because during the course of this conversation, you've mentioned that it's taken you months to write something. So I'd love to know, what is the process for you, and how do you know when to take that cake out of the oven when it's done?
So for me, it depends on the song. My general for a good song is 3 months. That's just what it's always taken me, because I get involved with other things, and because I think things need time to percolate. And I think it's important as an artist not to be afraid of time, because all you can control on stage or in a song or a piece of art is the time and the space. That's all you got. Everything else is ancillary. At 17 took 3 months because it scared me. Jessie, I started writing when I was 13, but I didn't have the experience to really finish it till I was 21. So that's also part of the waiting to me, is knowing when you've hit a roadblock because you're scared, or when you've hit a roadblock because you're just not ready. But Stars, which is arguably my most successful song in terms of other artists recording it, took 2 hours. I say in Nashville, you keep your motor oiled. You write every day, or you read something good every day. You speak about something artistic every day, so that oils your motor. And that way, when inspiration comes, your motor is ready. You read good things, you look at good things, you don't let garbage go in. The process of writing a song, I can't really compare it to anything other than writing a book or a haiku, which are the only other forms I know, or a short story or an article. You have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And with a song, you only have a very small framework. You've got normally about 3.5 minutes, which means if your first 2 lines don't grab people, too hot, too wet, too sticky. I mean, that people sit up. You know, Jesse, come home, there's a hole in the bed. People sit up. I learned the truth at 17. These are all universals, and I've always tried to deal in universals because that's what interests me. I don't want to write only for men, or only for women, or only for gay people, or only for Jews, or only for Americans. Within those confines of 3.5 minutes, to tell an entire story is really a wonderful challenge. And the process of doing that, God, I'm putting this badly. All right, let me drop a name. Bette Midler wanted to learn how to write songs. I was the first person she co-wrote with. Let me tell you, she's got an innate talent that's just astonishing. I wish she was a writer. But after 2 hours of working with her, I realized that I was exhausted because she was running down all these blind alleys I'd already accepted and rejected in about 10 minutes out of sheer experience. So I guess for me, the process when I was young was laborious and exciting and discovering rhymes that I didn't know could rhyme, and how to put a trick ending into something that people weren't expecting, and where a chorus could move me to tap my foot and where it couldn't, and how a guitar part could amplify something. Now the process is more, I don't know where this is going, so I'm going to trust my talent to take me there. And when I get there, I'll figure out how to express it. I guess I have a lot more faith in the process and the talent than I did then. It's very different from filmmaking as I understand it, but at the same time, it's tangentially the same, because we're all working in making people feel something. If we don't make you feel something with a song, with a film, with a piece, then we haven't done our job. Except in film, it seems to me it's a lot more complicated. But one of the things that, if I may, one of the things that made me crazy about the panel previous, I saw about 2/3 of it, was that music is such a below-the-line thing for films. It's a below-the-line cost. It's a below-the-line consideration. It's crazy making because a lot of the time there's 14 different people and you never get to talk to the filmmaker or the director. I was telling Liz Garbus that she did a brilliant thing with Stars and her Nina Simone film. I wasn't going to license it because there was zero money and it just didn't sound very interesting, but she wrote to me and she told me why she needed the song. And we gave her a festival license for no money on a step deal, because she made me understand. If you've ever studied filmmaking, which I'm sure many of you have, you know that in Days of Wine and Roses, there's that scene with Jack Lemmon. He's a terrible drunk. He hangs a bottle out of the window to hide it. When they first premiered that, as I understand it, there was no music and everybody laughed. Then they put in some really sad music and nobody laughed. So music makes such a huge difference in films. A song at the beginning of a film can do what a song on Broadway does to the libretto and encapsulate the film. And yet, it's very frustrating because filmmakers are dealing with so many other costs that we're kind of the last thing to be slapped on there. And for somebody like me who's sitting on top of 200 songs, it's like, come on, you guys, I've got stuff. I don't charge a lot. You know, a lot of us feel that way about film, and we sit there and we go, and then I license something like At 17, which I don't own, but I have veto power over, for something like End of the Fucking World, which was a 6-part BBC or miniseries from the UK that nobody saw. But it was such a beautiful usage of the song. It was so beautiful that I wrote to the filmmakers and said, this is one of the most wonderful uses of this song I could ever have imagined. Thank you. So anyway, not you personally, Lisa, but it's a frustrating thing for people like me who, again, write songs because that's what we love doing, and we love working with other forms in conjunction with our music. Somebody ask me something and shut me up, please. Yes.
I'll do him and then you.
Out of Parkland, Florida, the students got together and composed a lot of songs to express themselves and heal and also advocate for change. Marisol is actually a senior at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. What would be your advice? We've been in California a few weeks ago to be met with that kind of angst and opposition. I had a gentleman that was fairly aggressive, NRA member, who had some things to say. So I was taking NRA, yeah, about the gun issue. And so, do you have any advice for the students as they are embark on these songs and advocate for a change in gun policy, of what they may be met with as you were met with opposition, and any advice?
You mean how to survive those people?
And just in the moment when you're met with the kind of angst that you experienced, any advice as these songs make their way out?
You know, I think you can't change somebody's mind. You can lead them along, and that's one of the things art does. And you can change their heart, but you're not, to me, going to get very far quoting statistics at them or trying to get them out of the cult that they're in. Minnie Pearl taught me a great thing. She's a country comedian, and we did the first AIDS walk in Nashville. There was a lot of opposition. And somebody came up to her and said at the beginning, "What do you think about people who think that it's God's judgment on gay people that they get AIDS?" And I thought, boy, I want to punch your lights out. That was my reaction. Minnie looked at him and said, "Well, I just feel sorry for those people because that's just so sadly ignorant. I feel sorry for them." And I thought, my God, in one line, she managed not to insult them, but to leave the door open for them to change their minds in a way that my combative stance would never have done. I don't know if that would work nowadays, though, because nowadays journalists are getting their passports taken away until they agree that they're propagandists. I mean, it's a different world. I can tell you that from my point of view after Society's Child, I say, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is I'm shot on stage and I'm dead and I don't care. What's the next worst that can happen? I'm shot on stage and I'm paralyzed for life. In which event that would be pretty awful, but great publicity.
And a new book.
You know, you have to fight against the tide. You have to, because otherwise, what is the point? If you don't continue doing that, and you get tired. I'm tired. I'm really tired. I'm walking away some point soon because I'm tired of arguing with people. I don't want to argue over royalties and percentage points and who got 3 seconds more time on air and whether somebody's using my name in a film or a show that I didn't license. I don't want to argue about that stuff anymore. I'm done. But you're still young enough that you have to do it. You're stuck. And you just have to remember to take time for yourselves. You're getting advice from so many people. You don't need it from me. I mean, y'all know what to do. Your hearts are telling you. Just don't listen to all those people. Everybody's got an agenda, both sides. Everybody wants something from you, both sides. Just don't trust any of them because they've all got their own agendas.
Question over there?
Yes, my question kind of dovetails with hers about process. I was wondering, like, how do songs come to you? And do you have like a place where you write them, or does it happen when you're driving down the road, or
Happens when I'm bored.
when you're bored?
That's the truth, I think, for most art, and it's one of the great dangers of the digital age. We create usually when we're young, when we're bored, because we want to amuse ourselves. And even now, I have to force myself to get off the computer and away from people and let myself get tired of just sitting there thinking. And then usually something comes. But otherwise, it's anybody's guess. I mean, I'm fortunate in that I write music or lyrics or both. And I play a couple of instruments, so I can always springboard off something. Sometimes I get an idea, sometimes I get a title, sometimes I get a samba feel, sometimes I get just a little piano thing, sometimes I get a bass line in my head. Sometimes I just get annoyed with myself for not writing, so I write. You know, it just, like there's a song, Married in London. I got married in Toronto. I think that's me. And I was so annoyed when I came home. I don't know, can I close with this? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that me, Jeff?
I'm not moving.
Dude, you're the sound man. How can you not be sure?
Oh.
So when I came up there was no gay marriage. People were still getting lobotomized for being gay, and families were still putting you away. And I fell in love at one point with a man, and so that became very confusing for everyone. Whereas, as I said to my mother, you said to me, only sleep with people you love. You didn't specify gender. So, but I've been with Pat for 30 years, and I was in London when they passed gay marriage. And I got really angry because I thought that America should have been the first country to do that. And then we went and we got married in Canada because I had to be there for a science fiction convention anyway. And so I asked Pat, did she want to get married during the convention? But I got really angry about it. And I got so angry that at one point Pat turned to me and she said, you better turn this into something funny because it's terribly unbecoming. So I wrote this. And I'll close with it just because it's fun. Remember that this was written about 10 years ago. We're married in London, but not in New York. Spain says we're kosher. The States say we're pork. We wed in Toronto, the judge said amen. And when we got home, we were single again. It's hard being married and living in sin. Sometimes I forget just which state I am in. Thank God I'm not Catholic. I'd be a mess trying to figure out what to confess. So, speaking of process, where do you go from here? Try to make it more universal. My passport in Sweden says I've got a wife, and Amsterdam tells me I'm partnered for life. But back in America, land of the free, I'm a threat to the national security. So then, how do you end that song so that the people who are against gay marriage in the audience don't leave? So that it's not threatening, but it makes the point, because that's the hard thing to do in a political song. If I were a frog, here is what I would say. It's hard being green. It's hard being gay. But love has no color, and hearts have no sex. So love where you can, and fuck all the rest.
Thank you. That was so great. Thank you, Janis. That was just the best. Oh, it's you. Excellent. Thank all of you for coming. You amazing audience. Thank you all.
That was a good panel, Dorothy.
That was
Thank you.
amazing, Janis.